We are definitely at a very, very dangerous moment. We are literally on the brink of a regional conflict. You cannot control all of the variables. So this could literally engulf more countries.
What many in the world had hoped to avoid appears imminent. Outbreak of a regional war in the Middle East. Israel extends what it calls a limited ground war into southern Lebanon against the militant group Hezbollah, as Iran bombards Israel with hundreds of ballistic missiles after Israel launched an airstrike into Lebanon that killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. What began as a war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza 1 year ago after Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel on October 7th, killing 1,200 people and taking more than 100 hostages, has now erupted into clashes with Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iranian missile attacks on Israel, and Israeli attacks on the pro-Iranian Houthis in Yemen. The Israel escalation into southern Lebanon began in earnest several weeks ago as it pummeled Iran-backed Hezbollah with airstrikes, set off exploding electronic devices, assassinated the group's leader with a missile attack in the suburbs of Beirut, and then on Monday launched a ground operation aimed at restoring security along Israel's northern border. Over the past year, thousands of Jewish settlers in northern Israel have left their homes because of repeated cross-border attacks by Hezbollah. Now, as Israeli troops advance into southern Lebanon, Israel has told Lebanese civilians to evacuate villages there. Lebanese officials estimate the number of displaced people at more than 1 million. To discuss the escalating situation from his home in Beirut, Lebanon, we are joined by human rights activist Dr. Khabib Malik. He is a retired professor of history and cultural studies at the Lebanese American University and currently works for the Charles Malik Institute at the Philos Project. Charles Malik, Habib's father, was Lebanon's first ambassador to the U.S. He was instrumental in shaping the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Dr. Malik, thank you for joining us. Before we talk about the broader regional tensions and how we got there, let's talk about your personal situation. You are joining us from your home in Beirut as Israeli airstrikes batter your city's southern suburbs. What are you seeing and what are you hearing from your friends and neighbors?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thanks to EWTN. I live in the greater Beirut area, meaning I live outside the city technically on a residential hill overlooking the Mediterranean and the city. This means we hear everything, all of the explosions we hear, but we are so far away from any direct action. Now, the bombing, frankly, is really all over the country, except that it's very targeted. And this is interesting because the Israelis, before this current escalation, spoke several times about returning Lebanon to the Stone Age in the case of all-out war. And this seems to have lulled Hezbollah into thinking that, well, Lebanon will bear the brunt of all of the attacks and they'll somehow manage to survive within all of this wreckage. As it turned out, they were specifically targeted and they continue to be targeted with far less fallout on the general population. Of course, there are displaced people, there is some collateral damage, but these strikes have been fairly precise in, in terms of overall war experiences.
Well, we are grateful for your safety in the meantime. Monday is October 7th, the first anniversary of the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel. EWTN News In Depth last spoke to you in December of last year, just 2 months after the start of Israel's military response to Hamas. At the time, you said, quote, "The last thing we want is for the war in Gaza to spread northwards and for escalation to take place." Well, here we are. What do you think went wrong that allowed the situation to spiral towards a regional war?
Well, a number of things. First of all, there has been very little appreciation in Lebanon and generally on the side of the proxies of Iran and Iran itself of the existential impact of what happened on October 7 with respect to Israel. This was not going to be, a repeat of the 2006 war. So there was a great potential for escalation. Now, of course, we have seen that Israel, after tolerating months and months of unprovoked attacks by Hezbollah, which started on October 8th, the day after the Hamas attack from Gaza on Israel, totally unprovoked. The Israelis seem to have had enough, and now they have a new they have a new war goal, which is to return their displaced 80 or so thousand residents from northern Israel that have come under months and months of sustained rocket fire from Hezbollah. So this was obviously going to be the trigger to expand the war. The intransigence of Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah specifically, is really responsible for this escalation. I can't single out any other factor than this. Back in November of last year, I wrote a small article in which I said that Iran should get zero rewards in Lebanon. Well, I'm happy to see that nobody's in a mood to give Iran any further rewards in Lebanon. In fact, what it already has in Lebanon may be eroding as we speak.
Can you please explain to our audience who may not have a clear picture on this, what the vast majority of the Lebanese population thinks about Hezbollah, the Islamic militant group and Iran proxy that has so much power in Lebanon? What was the reaction when Israeli airstrikes in Beirut targeted and killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah 1 week ago?
Well, even before the death of Nasrallah, I can say the majority of Lebanese were opposed to Hezbollah and to the fact that Hezbollah has actually been protecting the corrupt mafia ruling class that has defrauded the country since 2019. It has brought on total political paralysis in the country. It is responsible for the economic and financial collapse of the country. They have created their own enclave. They declare war and without consulting anybody in Lebanon. So all of this has been, part of the grievance, a very justified grievance that the majority of Lebanese communities have with regard to Hezbollah. And so when Nasrallah's own personal demise came, people were not going to disguise the fact that they were relieved. In fact, many were elated at his departure, simply because they consider him responsible for much of the misery that Lebanon has been going through for years, if not decades.
Do you see a diplomatic solution that would end this regional conflict? And what can the United States do? What can the non-Hezbollah Lebanese population do to bring peace?
Look, definitely we need to have a president elected in Lebanon. It has been almost 3 years without a president, and Hezbollah is largely responsible for that. Now, the timing of that and making sure that the mafia militia cartel, as it were, protected and led by Hezbollah, does not manage to get their puppet candidate as president. This is a tricky situation. I'm not really reassured that the Biden administration knows the proper timing for bringing about the presidency. There are excellent candidates who are very competent, I think, in working to revive Lebanon and restore many of its broken institutions. But for them to have a chance to become president, I think that requires a further erosion of the mafia militia cartel's clutch on Lebanon. So we shall see, whether developments on the ground in terms of the war hasten the bringing about of presidential elections and a diplomatic solution, or whether people opt for that and end up risking botching it because the forces of obstruction are still not weakened sufficiently. We don't know yet.
With my minute remaining with you, finally, more than 1 million Lebanese have already been displaced from their homes as they seek safety from Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The U.S. State Department has encouraged all Americans to evacuate the country. You remain in your home. What do you see as the future for yourself and for the Lebanese people?
Well, look, we have a big problem now with displaced hundreds of thousands of people, mostly Shiites from southern Lebanon, further up north. And many are going to the Bekaa. Some have gone to Syria. Some have even gone as far as North Lebanon is concerned. On the human and humanitarian side, people have tried to, open up schools and vacant buildings and so on to help absorb these internal refugees. However, given the fact that among them there could be infiltrators from Hezbollah and these could be targeted by Israel, many communities are very reluctant to receive these people. And so there have been some instances of friction, thankfully not too many. But this is down the road. This is going to be a huge problem because returning any of these people back to the south and to their destroyed villages is not going to happen anytime soon. The Bekaa Valley can, in theory, absorb quite a lot of them. But this is still a very fluid situation, I can say, from a security point of view.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Malik, thank you for joining us, and we'll continue to pray for your safety. Thank you.
Thank you.